Hey there, travelers. Are you looking for a place where you can find professional sports, internationally recognized arts and museums, take in the sights of beautiful architecture, whether it's colonial or magnificent churches? Perhaps you're looking for a festival where you get hit in the face with tomatoes, run for your life from the bulls. Well, Spain might be just that place. Spain's got a wide range of activities for you to enjoy. And my guest today is going to share some of his stories and his experiences while he lived in Spain. So I would like to welcome my yerba mate brother and partner in crime, Devin. Devin, how's it going?
Hello, Jeff, Yerba Travels. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. This is truly an honor, and I'm looking forward to talking about this because this is going to be fun. I've not been able to share this story actually, probably anywhere else. So thanks for giving me that space.
All right. You guys get the exclusive right here on Yerba Travels. Devin and I go back quite a bit. We met pretty much over mate
Yeah,
through Instagram, and
yeah.
we've grown a relationship since then. We've chatted about yerba mate, about traveling experiences, and yeah, from some of the stories that Devin and I have talked about off camera, I know he's got some pretty incredible ones you're going to want to listen to today. So, Devin, let's talk about Spain, right? Tell us a little bit. When did you go there, and what or who inspired you to go to Spain?
Okay, so I will start with like when. That's a good question because now I got to think about what year that was. But it was after graduating university, so 2012, I think, 13, somewhere in that period, and it was about August. And why? So, actually, what the inspiration came from was I changed my major to Spanish from civil engineering to Spanish because that's the most logical decision to do with your career path, of course. Um, no, I realized I when I studied abroad in Costa Rica, I was like, this is something I love. This is what I want to do. This is like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but this is what I like. And my professor at the time encouraged me, to continue with that degree and gave me this opportunity to teach English in Spain about this whole program through the Spanish government that you could apply for and everything. So I applied for that while I was getting ready to graduate and waited for a couple months for that answer and got accepted into the program to teach English in Spain, in Galicia, which is the west corner, so right above Portugal. So the opposite side of like Barcelona. It's the other side of the let's say the west coast, on closer to the Atlantic
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
of the province, or the anonymous community, as they call them, of Spain, where Santiago de Compostela is.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's how I got into Korea. I wasn't introduced by a professor, but I was introduced by a friend of mine. We were just hanging out one night, and he brought up ESL, and it's something I had never heard of. And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" He goes, "Oh, you get to go to these different countries. I'm looking at Korea and Taiwan, and you basically teach over there, and they pay for your apartment and this and that." And I went,
Yeah,
"Well, that sounds cool. All right, you get
yeah.
paid, and they take care of your housing, accommodations, everything." Shoot. So I looked into it, and I was over here less than a year after that conversation, so I know how that goes. That's pretty cool. So through that, then, did you get to select the city that you went to? You mentioned that it was through the government. Did
Mhm.
they place you, or did you have an option?
No, they placed me, and well, you get to pick. I think I don't know, 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly how many, but you get to pick a couple of your desired locations, let's say.
Hmm.
Um, and Galicia was definitely not on that list. But but nonetheless, I ended up loving it, and I'm very grateful for the location I was placed. Um, because so many things and festivals and things, unique culture aspects that I got to imagine or see, and even the Camino de Santiago itself, because of being there, um, was a result of that, and I can share more of those stories later. But the I guess the extra cool thing about where I was at, I was placed in a little town called Tui, which is right on the border of Portugal. Why that's cool is because um, it's a plurilingual school, so they taught Spanish, obviously, but Gallego, which is the Galician language, and English, which was what I was teaching, to an elementary school actually. So it was like a K through 12 school, a very
Mm,
small school, but it was really cool that it wasn't just Spanish and English, but also Galician, which is an interesting thing. And Galician or Gallego is kind of like a mixture between Portuguese and Spanish, basically. But where I
okay.
lived is a town called Vigo, which I think was like 300,000 people, maybe. So it's actually a pretty decent size city, but it's feels very small. And it was only about a 30-minute bus ride from there to my school. And I only had to teach a couple days a week. I didn't have a very full schedule, which was another huge benefit of the program and
Yeah.
allowed me to do more traveling and cool things that I was able to experience. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So you said it was close to the border of Portugal. From that little
mhm,
town, whether it
mhm.
was a bus or train, was it easier to go into Portugal, or was there a town in Spain that was close? What was the closest town to you, and where did you go most often?
Well, I could go literally from where I lived in Vigo, straight to Portugal. I didn't have to like skip. I didn't have to make an extra stop. I guess what I'm saying. I could take a bus from there or train from there, either one. Um, for those that are not familiar with Europe, buses are the cheapest way to travel by far. Train is the more, I guess, comfortable way because you don't. I mean, you just literally just get on the train and you're sit there and stand up, walk, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Um, but also more affordable than a plane sometimes, but not always. Sometimes planes are cheaper. But getting to the airports and stuff and all that other stuff that we all face is usually a little bit more complicated, and therefore the train is, I think, more enjoyable too of a trip. But bus is the cheapest and just as enjoyable because you get to kind of see more of the countryside and more stop in random little towns and stuff. And so,
Yeah. The driving the countryside over there, is it mountainous? Is it you driving through forest? Are you driving along the beach? Because you're right there on the
mhm,
Atlantic.
mhm.
What's it like to drive through that part of the country?
So I guess let me preface by where I went in Portugal most often was a city called Porto, or O Porto in Portuguese, but Porto. Um, and that was about an hour bus ride from where I lived. And then I went to Lisbon, I think twice, and I went by train just because it was so much further away. It was easier to take a train. Um, and I went to Porto a lot actually, because it was, like I don't know, maybe €7 bus trip. I could be there in an hour, spend the day, and come back. So I made a lot of weekend trips or sometimes just day trips just because. So I went there quite a lot, and
Yeah.
um, so Porto was a place. Now getting there, um, because it's Porto is obviously a port city, so it's by the water, but going there was mostly kind of rural, um, just kind of grain, just regular, I don't know, forest, not forest, but like just countryside. I mean, I
Just
guess is the
countryside?
simple
Yeah.
simple way to say it because Galicia, funny fact, and this is I think the really cool thing about Galicia is it's very similar to Ireland, which you're thinking like, why? Okay. Um, and in fact, a lot of Irish or pre-Irish, basically the Celtic peoples, immigrated into, or rather conquered, I guess, part of Galicia
Mhm.
and literally built their settlements in places like Vigo. There's actually a museum and a history site, a historical protected site of where they built these. Um, I forgot what the name of them, but these special type of huts and settlement where they could see over the city and see the port area. which Vigo is also in a port area, and so that way they could see any people either coming in or going out, if any attackers were going to come. But they
Right.
settled that area because it's actually very similar to Ireland in kind of the stereotypical sense of what you think of as Ireland is these cliffs and hills and green and lots of rain. And it's pretty stereotypically like that. And I can say that because I've been to Ireland, but yeah, it's kind of similar. And that's a lot of what the Galician countryside kind of looks like as far as this mixture of obviously European Spanish culture, but also they have these kind of underlying Celtic roots. And in fact, the soccer team there is Celta Vigo, which is Celtic, Vigo, and some of the ultra or the super fans dress up in kilts and everything, and they actually still play Celtic music there in Galicia. They play bagpipes and a thing called a hurdy-gurdy, which is like a accordion that you crank. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Wow.
Something you have to see, and would definitely encourage someone to go check it out, especially Vigo, because that's a bigger city to base out of. A lot of the other towns in Galicia are very small countryside towns, which is cool because you get a unique perspective and there's still things to do. But as far as like, I guess, living space,
How far outside of, well, I guess, what's the closest big city? I mean,
closest big city.
Barcelona's on the other side of Spain,
Yeah.
right? So what would be the closest city there? Would it be easier to fly into, say, Lisbon and come up, or is there a closer city that people can get to see this kind of countryside?
So you can fly into Vigo.
Hmm.
I don't I don't know what it depends on where you're flying from, right? But Porto in Portugal is going to be the biggest, closest city, um, bigger
Do you
than
know if they have
Vigo.
like international flights coming in?
Yeah, because I
You know that?
flew
Oh, they do.
actually back
Hmm.
from the US into Porto when I went back home for Christmas and flew back into Porto and then, just took the bus up. Um, you can also fly into Santiago de Compostela as well, because obviously, because of the pilgrims, there's an international airport there.
Right.
Um, Madrid is obviously the biggest, but that's at least a probably 10-hour train ride. I don't know how long it'd be by bus or whatever. But yeah, Madrid is kind of far away, as well as Lisbon. Lisbon's kind of far away in terms of you would have to either fly or it's also about another 10 or 12-hour train ride or so. And
Wow.
Barcelona's the whole other side. They do have
Right.
this thing called the Sky Train, which is basically daily flights from Barcelona to Madrid back and forth all day. Um, but yeah, that won't get you into Vigo necessarily. So you can fly into Vigo, you can fly into Santiago de Compostela and or Porto, which are probably the other places. But like I said, it depends on kind of where you're coming from and to. But
Well, I think you just it's quite amazing. I knew Spain was big, and I know a lot of these countries are a lot bigger than we think they are, especially when we just look at a map. But I did not know Madrid was a 10-hour train ride.
well, same for me. Well, I didn't know it until I did it. Like I was like, oh, you should be able to be there in like 2 or 3 hours, right? I mean, Spain's not that big, but you know,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Well, here in Korea, if you went from Seoul, which is kind of the northwest, down to Busan, which is the southeast, so you're basically diagonally, you're cutting the country. I think the train ride itself, 3 hours. I think
mm,
by it's the high speed rail.
mhm. Yeah,
It's
well, they don't have
maybe
the
even
same
less
high
than
speed
three
rails
hours
in Spain
now.
also as they do in Asia, but or at
Do
least
they have
that
a
I'm
high
aware of.
speed rail in
Not
Spain?
that I'm aware of. Yeah,
Oh,
not to that kind of extent. No,
hmm. Yeah.
not
I
like the
mean,
bullet
even to
trains you guys
drive,
have. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they're getting faster too. They got a new one. Um, but even to drive Seoul to Busan is probably about 5 hours.
Mm.
So
Which
it's
for
not.
my Americans out here, like that's like, man, that's forever. Like I can get all the way down to Pensacola, Florida, in about that much from where I'm at in Tennessee. So so
Yeah, and from where I am from, Cincinnati in the States, for us, we used to take trips up to Chicago, or
yeah,
sometimes we cross over to Windsor, and that's about 5 hours.
yeah.
So
So you can literally
For
almost get to
me,
Canada and yeah,
yeah,
whole other country.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really cool. So the traveling, Madrid, Porto. All right. I was going to ask you about the culture, but you kind of hit on that already. The Irish culture that's in that
Mhm.
kind of northwest part. That's really cool. What about some of the experiences that you had? What were some of your favorite experiences outside, say, the big tourist areas? What were some of your favorite?
Yeah, and so that's kind of the other to expound upon that story of the Celtic, right? So in the town I was at, there's this actually pretty cool museum of about all that history of the Celtic kind of founding and everything. And they also have in in a lot of Europe as well, there's these hidden gems basically of these like places that have just been there for centuries, literally, like this building, the same building that's been there since, 780 or whatever, and then
Right.
you find little churches and things like that that are just like, wow, like I can't believe
Yeah.
this has been here that long. Here in the US, it's
Yeah.
like we tear a thing every down every 100 years, like so stadiums,
Yeah.
we're rebuilding those every 20 years. And anyways, so um, there was a wedding at this like little, chapel, um, and it was a Celtic wedding. Let's call it that. But basically, they're playing the bagpipes and they're dressed in like traditional um, outfits and stuff. And so I'm just an observer, people watching, walking down the street, and I was like, that's cool, you know. Um, and then there's this, I forgot the name of it. I should have looked this up before, but it's a reenactment of basically the Galicians kicking out the French. The French tried to take over that part of Spain. I forget the whole battle or what it was called, but I'm sure I could find it and give it to you in the show notes or something. But it's a reenactment of that battle and a celebration and kind of a holiday for that, where they acted out literally in the city, in the town, in the old town as they call it, basically the part of the town that is still very, like, pre-colonial, you know what I'm saying? Like, old brick, like, little bitty streets and those kinda things where it's
Yeah.
you can tell
Colonial
it's
town.
literally
Yeah.
yeah, where it's been there for you can tell it's been there for hundreds of years, like, literally bricks and everything. So, in that part of the old town, they literally reenact, like, that battle and all that kinda stuff, and,
Wow.
the whole parade and music and stuff in it, and so that was really cool. There was this other festival, I don't remember the name or exactly what town it was in, but it was a little town maybe like 30 minutes away. And it was another kind of medieval festival of sorts. And people, dressed up all medieval and everything, and they were selling, all this kind of street food and all these kind of delicacies that are in Galicia, which is a lot of seafood, good seafood, octopus actually,
Mm.
which I know you're familiar with, but maybe everyone else might be like, "Ooh, octopus," but
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really good, really good. It's fresh, and way they prepare it is they literally boil it and then kind of fry it just really quickly with some olive oil and salt, and I think a little paprika, and that's it. And just there you go.
Mhm.
And you just kind of what they typical of Spain is the picadas or the tapas. What most people are familiar with, like the little side dishes, appetizers that you serve at basically everywhere, but bars especially. They with every drink you get like a little tapa.
Hmm.
So sorry, I distracted. Let me go back. So that festival, they had things like that octopus and all these other, kind of delicacies and different types of sausages and things like that. And it was just this huge festival party, like, for the whole town, like, all night. Like, I went with some of my American friends that had been living there in Spain, and they showed me the whole thing, and I had some other Spanish friends and stuff too, but we literally hung out there all night and then caught the bus back in the morning at, 5, 6 in the morning as soon as the buses started running again.
Yeah. Just stay up and
So we
party
literally
the whole
stayed there
time.
all night.
Yeah.
And that's the other crazy thing about Spanish culture as far as they definitely, have that culture of enjoying the moment, enjoying the party, and and like there's a classic of mañana of culture, and basically like tomorrow, like we'll do it tomorrow, like that that can wait basically. Let's
Mm.
enjoy the moment now, kind of thing, and that's kind of it can be a clash for sure with us Americans of like why aren't we getting this done? This needs to be done today. It's like do it tomorrow, and but at all the same time kind of a relaxing, like, you know what, no need to stress about this, let's enjoy this moments and stuff. So that was a story for sure, because I'm not a night kind of person, but that, so staying out all night and then catching a bus back at 6 in the morning and to get back to my apartment and crash, so
Oh, your own weekend at Bernie's, I guess.
yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Definitely a
it's
story I'll never
amazing.
forget, yeah.
It's amazing how culture, it kind of hits you in the face. Whether you're
Mm,
going somewhere to live or even just traveling. I mean, you mentioned how Spanish cultures will just wait for tomorrow, right? Let's enjoy this moment. All right, they're obviously not putting everything off, but let's wait for tomorrow. I tell you, Korea is complete opposite. Korea has what's called Bali Bali culture, and it's just like do it now, do it now, do it now. Everything's got to be fast and get done like right now. And so it's, you know, any foreigner or any expat that's traveling will hit something.
mhm.
Their culture is going to clash somehow with the other one, and it's important to. It's kind of cliche to say, but when in Rome, do as the Romans. It's
It
teaching wise. If you say you're working, not just traveling there, you're going to create a lot more issues for yourself if you're clashing with it rather than learning it, adapting to it, and not necessarily changing your life, but you know, adjusting a bit so that you know can fit in that culture. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I guess just to tell a little bit more on that story as well, and stick with that theme of kind of the culture clash. So those that don't know, I'm bilingual. Like, yeah, I said I, graduated in Spanish, but I studied, I lived abroad. So it wasn't my first time abroad, and it wasn't my first time being immersed in Spanish. So I thought, this, piece of cake, right? Like, I understand the Spanish culture, like Latin culture. Spain is not the same necessarily just because it's Spanish speaking. And like it's also different, like living for a longer time too, you start to see more things, because when I was in Costa Rica, I was only there for like 4 months. And I was living with a host family, and it's a little bit different than when I was by myself in Spain
Right.
for, almost a year. And so I started to see more things and more exposure and things, and there was a lot of great things, don't get me wrong, but there were certain times where that clash, yes, it was just like, "I hate this. Like, why are you guys doing it like this?" And I had to tell myself, "Look, I'm just this one guy in this country. It's their country. Like, I can't be that way. I can't be, like, expecting, 30 million people to change to me because I do it differently," right? Like, there were certain things that really, really, ticked me off, and kind of my core values of, like, why are guys, like, that's so, counter blah, blah, blah. But then, I just had to realize, okay, like you said, when in Rome, okay, if, I got used to the siesta because I thought that was just a stereotype, but it's true. Like, especially in Galicia, like, it's a siesta, like 2 to 4, nothing other than eat and take a nap. There's nothing open, there's nothing to do, like siesta, that's it. Like, there was one grocery store I found that was open, but there's no banks, there's no nothing. You can't get anything done, literally. And so that was so frustrating because it's like, when am I ever going to get anything? Like, I need to do these things. And like, I'm teaching this time. It's like, when can I do this? And so it was some of those cultures of like, oh, you guys, like, this whole manana culture started to rub on me. It's like, I need to, get some things done. And then realizing, okay, I'm here. Might as well just adapt to however they do it. Then if they do it this way, then I just jump on board and stop complaining. It's going to be easier if I just go with the flow instead of trying to fight everything about this. So I guess just to say that even though I was familiar with the language, the culture, it still was a clash. And I had a reverse culture shock coming back to the US, because
Mm.
after a while I kind of got used to certain things of the can I don't know, with in the in Europe being able to walk to certain places, and the just the different things that were available to me getting on the bus, and
Yeah.
just instantly and doing this kind of things, and then coming back to the US and everything's drive through, everything's like 20 minutes away, everything's like like complicated in the sense of like, and I was like, oh, I hate you guys, like, America, get it together, like, so I had the reverse culture shock coming back, and just like, so
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna kind of expand on that a little bit. What reverse culture shock is? It is a true thing. I mean, it's something that you experience, especially if you spend a certain amount of time away out of your country, not just a vacation, not just.
Yeah.
I guess you could get it from a study abroad, depending on how long you're studying,
Hmm.
if it's a full semester. But if you're living and working and then you go back home,
Yeah.
which culture shock, reverse culture shock, can sometimes hit harder than culture
Hmm.
shock itself. Um, and especially in cities that, like you said, all across Europe, here in Korea, and in other parts of Asia, public transportation is it's easy, it's convenient, it's fairly cheap. Um, and then to go back to, I'm from Cincinnati, where you're from. Uh, any any place that's not like a major city, you're
Hmm.
going to have trouble getting around. You're going to
Hmm.
have, you know, getting to the bank after work, rushing after work to get to the bank, or
Yeah.
picking up groceries at a certain time. Yeah, there's just a different. It's not just lifestyle, but also mentality too. I think
Yeah.
because one
Yeah.
thing I noticed when I was just back in the states this past summer, and it seemed like everywhere I went, the service culture was dead. It was kind of like you're paying my salary. Even a waiter or waitress was kind of had those attitudes, and it's completely different from here in Korea. Here in Korea, we have little bells on tables. So a waiter or waitress never bothers you until you hit a bell on a table. Somebody
Mm.
comes up, what can I get you? They run back, they bring it back like right away. In America, uh, they basically come to your table all the time. What can I get you? What can
Mhm.
I get you? What can I get you? Do you need something? And if you're used to it, you're used to it. And it's nice that you say, okay, they care about me. But
Mhm.
really, they just want a tip, you know? Like if I were to sit there and go, I need a water now, I need this now, I need that, you can start to see attitudes. So
Mhm.
there was, and there were other examples too, but there was just a mentality that I noticed from the culture as well with that whole reverse culture shock. So I'm glad you brought that up. Was there anything else that you noticed in like specifically about reverse culture shock? Something you really enjoyed in Spain
Mhm.
and maybe America doesn't have that?
Well, those were 2 really good examples, to put words to that I now I'm yeah, and I got another one, but yes, because where I was in my apartment, I could literally go downstairs and literally within literally a block of me, I could get, vegetables, meat, wine, bread, like all
Right.
little different little mom and pop shops for pretty cheap,
Markets. Yeah.
and
Yep.
yeah, and then just be right upstairs, and, you know, literally in, like, 10, 15 minutes, like, get everything and, like yeah. And then the US, you've gotta make a 30-minute trip to Walmart or wherever, or now you can get more delivery stuff, but then, it's like, do this, that, and it's like a whole ordeal to,
Hmm.
like, get stuff, and then the service, it's not the same, it's completely opposite actually, but in Spain, it's mostly the waiter doesn't bother you at all. Like, you basically yeah, you kinda have to beg for them to come to talk to you, and but it's usually they'll come more often than not, it's like a menu of the day kinda thing where they serve, like, an appetizer, then a main dish, then a dessert, and then a
Hmm.
coffee, and then a wine or whatever, and so it's kinda like this long extended lunch, and that's kind of the whole siesta culture is, like, the lunch literally takes, like, 2 hours, and, like, every 30 minutes, they're bringing you a new plate or something. So, basically, you don't really interact with the waiter other than tell them what you want, and then they bring it and just kinda they're just not there, basically. They stay out of the way, and this is kind of on purpose because the lunch hour is kind of more of a sacred time of catching up with friends and talking, this sobremesa, which I know you've shared before, but it's like this whole it's a relationship of more over that meal than it is about eating the meal in 30 minutes or less, where it is kinda here
Hmm.
in the US, and it's like you said, they're just coming back and back and back, and they're bugging you all the time, or at least that's the way I still take it as an American because it's like, I don't need anything, like, if I need something, I'll let you know,
Yeah.
right? And,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I
I'll
can
be a
raise my
little
hand or,
student.
like
I'll
yeah,
raise my
or
hand.
I'll
Hey.
exactly, or I'll just go, "Hey, I need some water," or whatever, like,
Right.
I guess that's the thing is, like, yes, it's like they're coming back, "Do you need anything? You guys good? You okay? You need anything? Everything taste all right?" It's like, "Yeah, and it did the last 5 minutes," like, so that's definitely one of those reverse culture shock that was like, "Geez, man, like, I hadn't even finished eating," you know? But another thing, um, that's it's kinda related, but not in the same of Europe, but I did a mission trip in, like, Peru, which is more poverty area, and to see what people were able to do with so little, and then also not really complain and all these other things, and then come back to the US and all our first world problems, and it
Mm.
really rubbed me raw, and even myself looking at I was criticizing myself like, "Oh, man, I've got way more than I need. I'm, blessed and all this great stuff." And then seeing other people complain, it's like, dude, you need to get out of here and go where I was, and then you come back, and then okay, all right, you're right. I need to chill and stop being a gripe little punk or
Mhm.
whatever. But so that's I guess one thing that really sometimes having traveled the world and stuff, I kind of am pretty harsh sometimes to my fellow Americans of first world problems and stuff of like yeah, I guess that's
Well,
one thing.
and it's the whole first world problem. Like it's a serious thing, right? I'm not going to say it's an issue. It's just something people deal with. But those who don't travel for extended period of time don't really understand what first world problems are, right?
Yeah,
And it's hard
just
for
not
us to
aware.
come
Mhm.
back and go, look, get off your phone for 20
Yeah,
minutes,
yeah.
right? Or stop complaining because your phone battery's dead. Like
Mhm.
there's so much, and it's really hard. At least it has been for me. Maybe it's easier for other people to really explain what those first world problems are.
Mhm.
Like you can
And
tell
maybe there you
people,
go.
but they're
Yeah,
just like, what are you talking about?
yeah. It could be true. Yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a thing. And it's, you know, obviously Korea doesn't consider themselves first world. That I would say they're a developed world. Um, they've got a growing economy and such, but I'm starting to see the first world problems here, especially when it comes to technology.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I imagine technology, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. So you've got to all these different experiences, the wedding, the battle retreat or the battle
About
reenactment.
reenactment,
That's
yeah.
really
Mhm.
cool. That is super cool. Um, and I think that's one of the best parts of getting out of these what I call tourist cities, right?
Sure.
These big cities
The
that
tourist
everybody wants
traps, yeah,
to
yeah.
go
Mhm.
to. Yeah, they've through my experience, the big cities now have just become traps.
Mhm.
And honestly, I'll probably do a podcast on this a little bit later. They're all kind of dumps now. I said it. I did. They're all kind of
Mhm.
dumps. I mean, if you seriously go to people want to go to Paris, right? It's not the city
Mhm.
of love anymore. It's the city of dumpster fires and riots. London's the city of stabbings. Anyways, we're not going off on a rant, but what I really want to know, and I want listeners to know, is there is so many amazing things outside of those tourist cities, right?
Mhm.
By all means, if your number one bucket list is to go to Brisbane or to go to Barcelona, Hamburg, whatever, do it, right? If
Mhm.
that's your goal, but expand, right? Get
Mhm.
outside, go explore, right? That's my thing. Just go explore. So, in your time in Spain, what were some of the what were some of your favorite locations that were outside of those tourist spots? What are some places that you could share with people without giving away those secrets, uh,
No,
where
no, no,
people
no.
should go see those places?
No, I agree, I agree. It's kind of like and some of these things, I'll admit, are not easy to find for a reason because it's only known by locals or it's not in the
Hmm.
tourist guide book, and with good reason. Um, and it's
Yeah.
usually not just because, it's not valuable. And so I guess maybe that's what I want people to also think too is like, just because it's not in the tourist book doesn't mean it's not a great place or whatever. It's just not famous for whatever reason, I don't know. But usually it's because it's just not well known or not easy to get to maybe, but I would challenge people to just, I don't know, maybe take a step or just try or just, what's the worst that could kind of happen by just going to this small town and just people watch, walk around. I've done that, just I don't know what the city has this little
Yeah.
town has to offer, but it's only going to cost me, you know, a euro 50 cents to go to this town and walk around and check it out. Maybe I'll find something cool and maybe not. And oh well, at least I can say I've been there. I did that. I went to, I don't even remember the name of the town, but there wasn't much there. But, I can say I went there and, um, you know, tried a few things and, grabbed a lunch and had a coffee by the beach and, okay, that was
Nice.
worth it. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing is like coffee culture, I guess in Spain is kind of similar in most of Europe as far as you kind of sit out on the sidewalk or the veranda or the
Mm,
porch or whatever you want to call it, but kind of that sidewalk coffee culture. And you
mhm.
just, it's like a euro for a coffee and you can drink that coffee as long as you want because no one's rushing you. No one's saying, "Hey, do you want a refill? Hey, this, that, and the other." Like, you order your coffee, you sit down, and the waiter doesn't come back and bother you until you're ready to go. So you can sit there and
Wow.
drink that coffee for an hour and just watch people. And I did that a lot of times. And sometimes, just for no reason, just I'm just gonna sit here for whatever. And
Yeah. Or just
that's an
relax,
easy thing.
kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like you don't really have to do anything special to enjoy it. I guess is another
exactly.
thing. But
Yeah.
specific locations though, there's this place called like in Latin, fin de terra, like end of the world, and
Mm,
it's basically like a cliff area, kind of like you would think like in um, Ireland or whatever, like these cliff faces, and you can see
okay.
because it's the furthest west part of Europe because technically Galicia like sticks out a little bit further.
Mm,
So technically it's the furthest west point. So in other words, you can see um, just the ocean. I mean, there's nothing really special about it other than you're just kind of at the end of the world, I guess, quote unquote, and being able to just kind of look out over the world in this kind of this moment, I guess, is there's nothing really else about it, but it's just kind of cool. And then also, um, there's a couple other little towns, but um, I forgot the name of it. Coruña, that's it. It's a smaller town. It's up the north of Galicia, and it has a old Roman lighthouse. Nothing really much there other than this Roman lighthouse that you can go up into. So it's not like I guess what I'm trying to say, it doesn't have to be this big, huge adventure to be this experience that you'll remember.
right.
Just I went up into a old Roman lighthouse. But I can think that's kind of the whole point of the journeys that people take anyways, is just to say they've been there, the experience, share the story, take a picture. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it, that's pretty much what people are wanting to do. And so those are some things that I did. There's also this other town. Um, that's what that festival was about. It was celebrating the arrival of Christopher Columbus back to Spain. That medieval festival that I talked about that I didn't
Yeah,
remember what
yeah.
the town was. I'll have to look it up.
Oh,
But that was why that whole festival celebration medieval thing was for. It was remembering the celebration and arrival back to Spain from Christopher Columbus, where he first landed back in Spain, was there. And so that's the whole celebration why that medieval festival was going there. But it's that little town like that that you would never find on a tourist guide. Um, and so sometimes you just got to ask locals and hey, what's going on, or go to the hostel or the hotel and ask the maitre d or whoever, and like, hey, what's some stuff that's not on the tourist guide.
oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
helps knowing the language, of course, because I can talk to the locals, but and ask certain those kind of things. So I'll admit, I had advantage, but I think just you know give it a shot. Take a little.
What are the chances of people knowing English in those countryside towns?
Yeah, that I don't know. Probably not very high,
Probably not much.
especially in that part of Spain. Yeah, I don't honestly don't know because I didn't try, but as I spoke Spanish, but yeah, unfortunately, Spain is. I don't know if it's improved since, but at the time, that was kind of the reason why they were contracting so many English teachers because they're not a very, in European standards at least, not a very
English
high on
speaking.
the English speaking country, to be honest.
Okay.
Not very English friendly, I would say. Of course,
Yeah.
Madrid and Barcelona are always going to have that, but outside of that, you're pretty much you're stuck. There were English speakers for sure. I met them, but yeah, you're probably not going to be the common person. Portugal, on the other hand, though, does have a lot of English speaking, so whatever, if whatever it's worth.
Okay. All right. What about other travelers or other people living and working there? Did you meet a lot of them, and did you get to exchange stories with them? Because that's a really good way to find other places.
And that
Because
was
a lot of
that was
tourists get to do their travel, and ones who work there have already been to little places like that lighthouse or something.
Mhm.
So, did you have that as an option too?
Yeah, and that was, I guess maybe that's another option and benefit of that teaching English is because it allowed me to connect with other teachers, colleagues, other Americans that were teaching there as well
Hmm.
that knew about these certain things, and you kind of have your little network, and they were able to, show me places, tell me about places, take me places. So that's how I found out a lot about those places as well, was, through some other colleagues from the school I was at, or other Americans that were also teaching that were living there in Spain as well, and they knew about certain things, or hey, I heard about this, that, and the other. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was super helpful in learning about those. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing about those programs too. The teaching programs is the amount of teachers that come in and go out. We get to pass on those experiences to other
Hmm.
teachers, right, or
Hmm.
other workers if it's something else. So we get to share those, and people come and people go. You make friendships. I still got friends that are scattered all across the world that I stay in touch with, and get to find out more information about where they're at now. But I also got to find out a lot about Korea the same way.
Hmm.
Hey, you've been here a year. What are some of the cool
Yep.
places you've been? And yeah, that's a
Exactly.
great resource. Well, I'm really excited, and I'm kind of gonna just shift here because I'm super excited to learn because this is a bucket list of mine, and I know it's a touristy place, even though I just went on that ramp. But the Camino de Santiago,
Hmm.
oh my gosh! So whether it's spiritual, religious, just an outdoor adventure, or just finding yourself, this trail, how long is it? Do you remember? I
Well,
was just
there's caveat. So yes, there are several Camino de Santiago's, quote unquote. So different ways to get to Santiago de Compostela, which is the end of the pilgrimage.
and that's the
So
church, right?
that is where the church is located. Yes, it's
Yeah.
in the town of Santiago de Compostela is the town, and the church is located there. Um, so the way that most people are familiar with is through France, across the Pyrenees, down in through the
Yeah.
north of Spain, up to there. And that one is much longer. I'm not sure the distance. However,
Yeah, I
there's
think it's
several different
about
ways to do.
that one through Spain. I'm trying to look right now. It's about 500 miles actually.
So I didn't do that one. So that's why
Wow.
I wanted to also talk about that as well, is that you don't have to do that way. You can do another way.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's not as touristy, um, because so you can, different ways. So one I did was basically from the border of Spain up to Santiago de Compostela, which in order to get the certificate, which I should have brought it with me, I have it. I'll have to take a picture and tag you in it.
Yeah.
I get a certificate of completing the way. Um, and if you go at least 100 miles, I think it is, or 100 kilometers, there's a certain distance that you can register, and they give you like a little passport, literally, of proof that you've like passed through certain towns and completed the requirements, quote unquote, as far as because there's different albergues, is what they call them, or little like basically hostels for the pilgrims at these certain locations, and you just get someone to stamp and sign that you were there, basically, to prove that you
Okay.
kind of did the journey, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I
So
did it
is it
from the
like a
border
book
of
or a paper that gets stamped?
yeah, it's like a little, just a little,
Look. Okay.
paper passport,
Yeah.
that they stamp and write, and then you turn that into proof. So yeah, I went from the border of Portugal and Spain up, and that's it was more or less basically the minimum quote unquote distance to get, and I did it in like I think 3 days, and I took my time, just walked, didn't run or bike or anything. And I think that to your point, whether it's spiritual or finding yourself or just going for a walk outside for exercise, like there's a million people you'll meet along the way that are all doing it for different reasons and all different things, and so I guess, yeah, uh, I expound more upon that story, but that I guess just to answer that question.
Yeah, I that's kind of what I'm curious about. Well, I didn't know that there were different routes either.
Mhm.
I just knew about that long route that went through the Pyrenees, France, came down, um, and I knew it was
And that's
long,
by far the most
500
popular and yeah.
miles. So
Mhm. And
yeah,
so where I got my inspiration to do this and is also in that is called a movie called The Way by oh no, featuring Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez.
I know what you're
Um,
talking about.
in
Yeah,
like 2010, and so so the funny thing is the movie came out like before I was going to Spain, and actually someone mentioned, "Hey, you're going to the Galicia. Have you heard about this movie, The Way?" And like honestly, I didn't know about the Camino de Santiago at the time, and so I watched the movie because I was kind of doing more research about Galicia because once I learned that I was going to Galicia, I was like, okay, where is that? Like, I literally was pretty ignorant. I was like, okay, I know of it, but I was like, what town am I going to stay in? Like, how I don't know anything about this place, like, and
right,
I literally just went to Spain and landed there and figured it out from there. I literally had no clue other than emailing with the teacher I was going to be teaching with. Like, I literally went sight
wow,
unseen, basically. And so, anyways, I did all my research and watched this movie called The Way, which is kind of where I got my inspiration to do the Camino de Santiago. And it tells the story about this man's journey doing the way or the Camino from that Pyrenees route that you were mentioning.
yeah,
So that was kind of my inspiration to it. I was like, oh, the movie's so moving and like kind of inspirational, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna do that. You know,
yeah,
I'm just crazy enough to try it. And but not. I was like, I'm not gonna do that way because I don't have that much time or willing to do it. I'm gonna do this shorter one, and I did it during like one of my breaks in school where I had like a week break. I forget why. I think it was some spring break or maybe it was for Easter. I don't remember exactly why. I think it was Easter break. But anyways, so I was like, okay, I've got 7 days to do this, and I'm just gonna take my time and walk up there. And met so many cool people along the way, and literally stopping and eating with some people, meeting complete strangers, and just helping each other, talking about, hey, why are you doing it? Because ultimately you're walking for an hour or two or whatever, and you this person that you don't know, and it's like, well, I'm Devin. What's your name? And why are you doing this? Pretty much is the common questions, right?
right.
And so you get to hear so many people's stories and inspiration of why they're doing it, what they're from, where they're at, why they came here, people coming from Germany or wherever that are like, oh, this, that, and the other. And you're like, that's cool. So it's just this cool, really shared experience as well. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, it's a total pilgrimage, really, right?
yeah, it
About
literally is a pilgrimage. So those that don't know about it, it's the pilgrimage of, in Roman Catholic terms, basically, of this journey to go to this church in Santiago de Compostela because that's where they believe the remains of Saint John is buried there in the church. Which I've seen the tomb. I don't know if those are the relics or not, but I'm not, I can't prove that, but I've been there and seen it. So, I've done the rituals that they do where they have this kind of service and they have this huge like incense burner that goes through the whole uh, cathedral, and and it's an impressive church as well, or a cathedral. All the pictures and stuff, and it's just a very iconic location and medieval looking town. So just a cool place to experience. Period. Um, and so that's kind of the quote unquote real purpose of the pilgrimage for I guess the traditionalist or whatever the word to use. But that doesn't mean you have to have that same reason to do it. I kind of was part spiritual of, hey, I guess it was because I think it was during Easter. It's like, I'm just going to take a walk outside and just kind of be some reflective time for myself and, kind of my time to meet some other people and talk to God and kind of, and while I'm doing it essentially as far as spiritual and then also just literally just an adventure. I was like, that would be cool. What a cool story and thing to do that I can tell my kids or whoever, like even to this day, I can share this story so many times and just very excited about it. Just like my experience was really cool and no one can take that from me, whether you were there or not. Like I experienced it and it was great. And so it was that. And um, yeah, really that was about really the reason just to go on an adventure and do something I've not done and be able to share this story and hopefully inspire others as well. So
yeah, I think that's the best part of going to explore is coming back with the stories that you get to share with other people and having that lifetime memory, right? Like I did this, what you're
And it
talking
ultimately
about, right?
changes you in some way, you know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it could be something small. It could be
Yep.
something long, like walking this um, Camino de Santiago, walking something like that. Could be just going to take a walk in nature for an
Mhm.
hour. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
it's about those moments that you get to share, and something like this, just something as epic as a 100-mile walk. That's nothing. That's not a small feat for anybody, right? I mean, you're not just jumping off the couch and going to walk 100 miles, but it's the journey, the pilgrimage, the finding out about yourself, meeting the people along the way, why they're doing it. I mean, you probably got thousands of stories just from that one exploration, just that one
Oh, yeah.
journey,
Mhm.
right? That's the best part of travel right there. That's the best. So the what's it like when you get, so I'm assuming you walked towards the church, not away from it. What was
Correct.
it like when you came up um, and you saw that? What were you thinking? What type of emotions did you have?
Mhm.
You knew it was the end, right?
Mhm.
What was going through your mind?
That's a great question. And I wanna, I guess, backtrack a little bit just so I don't maybe scare too many people off, is like this big adventure and this epic thing, like, it was over several days, so it wasn't like I just ran up 100 miles, and I'm just
You didn't
casually
David
walking. I
Goggins
took
it.
Yeah, exactly. I took casual breaks and stops at different restaurants and different places and albergues, which are the hostels, so it's not like, it was over several days, and it's very well, like, maintained, like, you have a path to literally, like, there's these little seashells is, like, the symbol of pointing you towards the church and where you're supposed to be going, the path you're supposed to take. So it's well marked, there's people along the way, you can always stop and ask, like, it's well marked, it's well maintained, and there's these rest stops or albergues along the way that you can literally, stay at for minimal cost, and they sometimes even provide you breakfast. They're well maintained, so it's not like this whole roughing it thing. So I guess just to clear that out. Um,
Good. Yeah, I'm sure a lot
however,
of
you
people would
are carrying,
appreciate that.
however,
Mhm.
you are carrying your stuff. Like whatever you got in your backpack is basically what you got, right? And so you carrying with you the whole time, or just don't carry anything. Wear the same clothes. I don't. I mean, I don't care, but uh, to each their own. But yeah, so once I get there, right, and I'm walking into the city, and I remember this like corridor kind of thing of like this kind of medieval street, and there's kind of these little shops and stuff on the side, and there's this specific office, let's say, that you have to go to get your like passport approved and to get the certificate of proving
Mm.
like you made it. And so it's like I remember coming up to the city because it's kind of you have to go uphill. And I remember stopping at like they call it a dia, which is it's like a Aldi's or I don't know what another equivalent that people would be familiar with, but basically like a Dollar General or
Grocery store,
a grocery store
something.
that's a very small discount kind of grocery store, and I just kinda grabbed, like, a baguette and some, lunch meat or whatever because it was, like, you know, 6 in the morning, and I was just kinda entering the city and because I just woke up and was ready to go in, but I remember it's like, "Okay, this is pretty unassuming," like, getting into the city. I was expecting, I don't know, some big, "Oh," or something, and it's like, just a normal city, but then I get to the medieval part, and you can see the church, like, in the distance, and it's like, "I did it." Like, "This is cool." Like, I don't know, it's just that I did it, and then I, get my passport signed, and I get this certificate, and I'm like, I feel like I, just graduated or something. I won some prize or something. It was like because you get this, like, little, like, diploma thing. It was just like,
Mm.
I don't know, it was just this feeling of, like, I did it, and, like, I have
Accomplishment.
proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, accomplishment, and, like, I have this legit, like, you know, diploma thing going on here. Um, man, I wish I thought I had it in my office. Um Yeah, I thought I could have sworn I had it here, but anyways, um, man, I gotta show you the picture now. So unprepared,
So when
but
before
but
you
yeah, it was
got to
just
the
that
medieval,
accomplishment. Yeah.
yeah, before you got to that medieval section, nothing nothing kind of boiled over until you got to that certain point? Like when you saw
Oh
the
no,
church?
there's lots of different things along the way, but yeah,
Mm.
that is kind of when. you know, at the time, you know, it seems so far away that you're not really thinking about, you're just thinking about the next town or the next stop, to be honest. Like the first night, it felt like, or the first day rather, that I was walking, it felt like forever to get to the first like town. In fact, it was starting to get dark and I was like kind of lost. I was like, man, I should have been here by now. Like,
Why did I start
like,
this?
yeah, exactly. No, seriously, I was like, oh man, I screwed up. I'm about to get lost and have to call 911 or something. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Literally the first day was like, okay, I thought this would be easier. I don't know. Like, and I got there to the town late and everything, and I was like kind of worried and but luckily I met another German traveler actually, and they were late too, and I was like, "Oh, okay, where do I go?" Like, "Okay, we'll just keep going this way." So we both found it together, but to be honest, the first time I was like, "Man, this is what did I get myself into?" And then you're just kinda thinking about the next stop, and then I guess it doesn't become realization, like I said. I was just kinda coming in the city, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Okay, there it is." And yeah.
What were your expectations before you set off on this journey? I mean,
It's a
did you plan your stops? You say, okay, I'm going to walk to this one. I'm walking, you know, 20 miles a day or X miles a day, and thinking like, okay, when I get to the end, this is, was there any expectation at all prior to starting it?
yeah, just finishing it in the amount of time that I had, um and I kinda Google mapped some of the locations, but to be honest, I had
Hmm.
no clue. Like, I've never been to these places, like, and I knew that they were yeah, it's 10 miles away, but I don't know how long is that gonna take me, like, I didn't
Yeah.
really I was like, "Well," go to honestly, they give you kind of the map, when you're starting, and then it's like, "Okay, there's this town, there's this town, there's this town," and you don't really know, like, you know, how long it's gonna take me. It's like, okay, well, there's this town and it's only 3 miles away. It's like, well, I'll be there in like, an hour. So I'm not gonna just like I just started, I'm not gonna stop in an hour. Like, let me get to the next one. And the next one's, 10 miles away, for example. So it's like, okay, well, I think I can make it there before, you know, late afternoon or something. I don't know. You're just kind of I honestly just kind of going with it as you're going,
Yeah.
I guess. Maybe that's part of the whole, pilgrimage too, of just kind of like and journey of life, like, you don't have all the answers, you just know,
Right.
like, the next step. I think maybe that's another philosophy too, of just, like, you don't have all the answers, you know what the where you wanna go and some of the places and how to get there, but, stuff happens along the way.
Absolutely. And what might, what you might think could take an hour to walk 3 miles might turn out to be up and down
Yeah,
terrain with rocks and this and that. It might turn into 4 hours. Again,
yeah,
it's a nice metaphor for life. I think that's a really good way to put it. Is, you know, you've got these expectations in life. You might even have a game plan for it, but
mhm.
could get rocky. You know.
I tell you one story about that, about getting Rocky. So, I was in, one of the, like, probably 2 or 3 more stops from making it to the city, and so I was, you know, uh just graduated college student and I didn't have a whole lot of money and I was trying to, save some money. So I got like some sliced meat for, like a euro and baguette, and that's just basically all I ate that night or whatever. And I got the cheapest meat or whatever, and so anyways, woke up the next day with like diarrhea and was feeling terrible. Like I felt like crap, literally. And you're supposed to get out of the albergue or out of the hostel at a certain time because, they gotta prepare for the next people, and I was literally just, like, passed out in bed, and the guys, like, told me, "Hey, you gotta get going." I was like, "Man, I don't know if I can leave. I don't feel good. I might have to stay another night or whatever." Anyways, I finally got back on the road and walked, but yeah, that was a terrible, uh, to the next stop. I was just get to the next city and just I'm just passing out in the bed, basically, yeah, so that was one thing as far
Did
as,
you make it in one go without having
I
without having to stop on the trail?
No, I made it, like but there were times, yeah, definitely where I was, like, looking because you can do this supposedly, is literally as a pilgrim, kinda ask, like, knock on a door or whatever, "Hey, I'm a pilgrim, can you help me out? Can I stay
Hmm.
here? Can you feed me or something?" And so I thought about that, I was like, because 'cause you're literally, like, walking past, just regular old places, like, there's a
Houses. Yeah.
house
Yeah.
here or whatever, and
Farms.
I thought about yeah, farm and stuff, and I thought about, like, "Man, should I just knock on this door and say, like, 'Look, man, I don't feel well. Can I just crash here for a few hours. Like I didn't do it, but I was so tempted to. I was like, I'm just gonna keep trucking on, and I just kind of sat to the side of the road for an hour or so and just drank some water until I felt better or whatever. But yeah, so that was a
Wow,
long,
what a
arduous,
warrior.
journey. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I guess I just was stubborn, to be honest, but
Yeah, I
I
guess
didn't
that's
want to
another
ask
way to
for
look
help.
at it.
Maybe I don't know. You know, I'm too embarrassed, I guess, probably to be like, yeah, I ate some bad meat or whatever and got diarrhea, and I just want to somewhere to stop and recuperate. But I guess I was too embarrassed to, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened after the journey? I mean, we can kind of wrap this tail end up here, the podcast. What when you got there, you finally got to the church.
hmm
What was next? Did you
Yeah, that's
enjoy the town for a bit? What was next?
that's kind of the down, and I think this is true for a lot of things. Is you win the trophy, you win the world championship, you get the goal, you achieve whatever you wanted to achieve, and then it's like, oh, what? So what? Now what? And it's like, okay, I got my goal, but well, now
What
what?
now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other philosophy of life about the journey. It's like it's not about reaching another certain destination. Like it's still a journey um, until you die, I guess. But like that was kind of the thing is I basically went to the church, got to see some of the rituals and stuff, and it was still like 9 o'clock in the morning or whatever because it was still early, and I was just like, well, I guess I'll just go back home now. And so I just caught a bus and went back to my town, and got back to the town in like an hour. It's like, it took me 3 days to get up there and like an hour on the bus to get back home, so like
Wow.
and then it was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna take a shower and go to bed. And I mean, that was pretty much it. Like,
No
and then of course,
fireworks? Yeah.
yeah, no fireworks, no nothing, it was literally just like, okay, I'm tired, I'm gonna go take a shower and go to bed. And that was pretty much it. And then of course, I told my colleagues and friends about it and stuff and everything. But at the same time, it's like, how do you explain this journey I just went on over the weekend? Like, hey, what did you do last weekend? Well, let me tell you, like,
Yeah.
and I ask him,
Yeah.
what did I do? Well, I hung out at the bar and, and played some soccer or something, and it's like, well, I went on, like, so, but yeah, well, after that, there's really, yeah, no fireworks or anything else. It was inspirational in the fact of, wow, I did this. I want to do this again. That was one
Mm.
thing, which I hadn't done this since, 2013 or whatever it was, so I haven't, so maybe this could be a 10-year anniversary. I thought about, taking my family one day and doing this together or something, so that's really it. I mean, after that, it was, just continue on with life, to be honest, but
Yeah, you continue on, but you continue on now with stories, right?
Mhm.
Memories and stories that you get to
Yeah,
share with
definitely a
people.
different person and stuff too. Mhm.
Yeah, different, yeah, mentality. I think a podcast just about that would be incredible. Just talking about the mentality, the preparation, the mentality, what goes into it, and then what you do after. What do other people do once they finish it? Do they run home to tell people? Do they feel the
Yeah,
same as you? Kind of like,
post it
well,
on Instagram. No.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I really admire what you're doing, sharing travel stories and inspiring people to travel because I can't think of anything else in my life that has had such an impact on me as traveling, getting outside of your comfort zone. And maybe that's all there is to it. Maybe that's the whole key of it. It's not so much the travel, it's the journey, it's the just getting outside of the 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 normalcy of life of just, pay the bills and to buy more bread so that you can go to work and pay more bills and, buy more food. It's like getting outside of that and being aware of what's going around you, exploring, checking things out, and it's just like getting a new perspective. So I don't know, for whatever it's worth, like travel. Whoever's listening, go somewhere, anywhere. You don't have to go to Spain to enjoy travel and be a changed person. Maybe just go to a town nearby that you've not been to and talk with some people that, at the cafe. Doesn't have to be this huge, or just maybe just get a coffee and just people watch.
I, I don't even know what to say after that. That is the perfect way to end the show, actually. Well, Devin, thank you so much for your time. I know the listeners are going to get a lot out of this. not just Spain, but as you said right there at the end about how travel inspires us, how it changes us, and helps us grow, especially. So thank you for that ending. And thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you so much, Jeff, for having me and allowing me to the space to share that story with your listeners. And hey, go travel, please. Do it for yourself and for others.
That's right. That's right. Go explore. This is Yerba Travels. We're out.